show on stories contemporary and consequential. This week we revisit the developments in Bangladesh. Third time we do since August. And the reason is the national security challenges that are emanating from Bangladesh for India. Very real threat to our northeast. Let's look at those. Second, true to himself, President-elect Donald Trump is redrawing the US foreign policy map even before he takes over. This week, he has sought to purchase Greenland from Denmark, threatened taking over of the Panama Canal, and repeated his jibes at Trudeau and Canada yet again. It's an interesting lineup of contests shaping up with consequences for global trade and politics. And the response of Denmark to Trump's swipe is symptomatic of what's happening in Europe, or what's ailing Europe. The continent is increasingly looking like it is in decline. As we close the year with this edition, we take a hard look at the phenomenon and the consequences of the decline of Europe on Europeans and the rest of the world. Let's get going. This week was chock-a-block with developments in our eastern neighborhood. Bangladesh in turmoil since the August strife that deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina sent an extradition request to get her back twice in a span of 48 hours. It would have been surprising given that our Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri was in Dhaka for a day just a fortnight ago, and sources tell me nothing on this front came up during the discussions. It is not surprising, however, if you piece together the events of this week and connect the dots. The day that Hasina's extradition was sought, Mohammad Yunus regime appointed Nasim ul Ghani the Home Affairs Advisor to the government. That's an interesting choice. Ghani is one of the founders of Hizb ut-Tahrir, a proscribed terror organization in India and Bangladesh. HUT played a behind-the-scenes role in hijacking the students' protests and turning them into a regime change operation, along with the Jamaat cadres during the July-August turmoil. Originally set up in Palestine in the 1950s, Hizb ut-Tahrir has since developed pan-Islamic presence across Muslim countries. The Bangladesh chapter came up in the year 2000 when Begum Khaleda Zia-led BNP government was in power. It aims to form a Sharia-compliant caliphate in the Muslim world, if need be with the use of violence and terror. Banned in Bangladesh by Hasina in 2009, Ghani's appointment puts the organization en route to revival. Worryingly for us, its cadres are active in at least 4 states of India, and the NIA charge-sheeted 2 of them in Tamil Nadu just this week in a terror case. They were arrested in the month of June after surveillance found them recruiting youth to indulge in terrorism by way of online and offline indoctrination. Days before this appointment, another key aide of Yunus, Mahfouz Alam, posted on his Facebook page a map of what some Bangladeshis call the Greater Bangladesh, a territorial fantasy that includes parts of Tripura, Assam, Meghalaya, and Bengal in their country. That was provocative and the post was promptly deleted. Perhaps it was aimed at eliciting the response it got. Remember, Alam is the same guy introduced by Yunus as the mastermind of the August uprising in Dhaka to his New York audience. Also this week, a Dhaka court freed former minister and BNP leader Abdus Salam Pinto. Now, who is this Pinto? He was accused of organizing terror training camps for Harkatul Jihad-e-Islami, or Huji, the Pak-occupied Kashmir-based anti-India terrorist organization carrying out acts of terror in Kashmir Valley in the early 2000s. So obviously, Pinto was on the rolls of Pakistan's ISI. He indulged in these anti-India activities while he was the Deputy Minister of Education in the Khaleda Zia government. He was arrested in 2008 in connection with the 2004 Dhaka grenades attack on an Awami League rally in which 24 League cadres died. Now he's a free man. Released along with him was Lutfuzzama Babar, one of the main accused in the Chittagong arms haul case of 2004. Babar had opposed the birth of Bangladesh in 1971 and created a militia that fought alongside the Pakistan army against the Mukti Bahini and the Indian army. He's also a free man now. gives you an idea of what mentality is controlling events in Dhaka today. You know what's the Chattogram or Chittagong arms haul case? 10 trucks of arms and ammunition meant for ultras in India's northeast were intercepted in Chittagong. The supplies were brokered by Pakistan's ISI, picked from China in a Chinese ship and brought to Bangladesh via Thailand when they were intercepted based on an Indian intelligence operation. Hang on, there's more. Also this week, a Bangladeshi court commuted the death sentence of Ulfa terrorist Paresh Barua to life term in jail. Now hiding somewhere in China, and our agencies know where, Barua was provided a safe house in Bangladesh for a long time when BNP was in power in Dhaka. Guess what? During the Chittagong arms haul that I just mentioned, Barua was coordinating from one of those safe houses there for the onward journey of the contraband to India's troubled northeast. In effect, we're back to square one. After the peace dividend of Hasina years, the present establishment in Dhaka is hell-bent on promoting anti-India circumstances. Yunus might have personal motivations against Hasina, for in a case of excess, he was convicted and sought to be put in jail by her government last year. Maybe that is the reason why he has been picked. But the larger agenda is to create a situation in which India's national security gets compromised. And it's getting visible as we speak. One Bangladeshi national, Saad Radi, was nabbed by Assam police from Kerala a few days back. Radi is an active member of the Al-Qaeda affiliate Ansarullah Bangla team, the ABT, whose leader Jashimuddin Rahmani was released by the Yunus regime in August itself. He had entered India, Radi, in November with the objective of activating ABT sleeper cells in Assam and Bengal. 8 others were nabbed along with him by the Assam police and have admitted to plans to activate sleeper cells through places like Murshidabad and Falkata and Dhubri with the objective of carrying out terror activities. The fact that he was caught from Kerala shows how deep the support system exists for these Bangladeshi radicals, compromising India's national security. Just a day before the Assam STF busted this terror module, 5 Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh JMB terrorists were apprehended from Kokrajhar and Dhubri districts, again a banned organization. The Assam police operation gives you an idea of the kind of hawk's eye our agencies are keeping on activities originating out of Bangladesh. They better be warned, for we know a lot more perhaps than we are showing at this stage. India won't brook any compromise with its national security, and more importantly, given the danger to her life, extraditing Sheikh Hasina is out of question. Moving on. President-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, is having fun ahead of his inauguration, redrawing the American foreign policy. If he executes in office what he has been saying as a build-up, not just the foreign policy, Trump might end up redrawing the map of the United States of America itself. Over this week, part jokingly, often seriously, Trump has claimed American national interest over the Panama Canal, over Greenland, which is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and of course called Canada 51st state of the USA umpteenth time. The joke bit is reserved for the last one, for Justin Trudeau specifically. The Canadian PM has been made to pay obeisance at the Mar-a-Lago residence of Trump, and a day after the meeting called the governor of the state of Canada just to rub in the insult. In a preemptive move, Trudeau made his deputy PM and the finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, leave the government, hoping to mollycoddle Trump, but to no avail. Trudeau's in permanent crisis mode from here or till he's ultimately phased out early next year. There's a third no-confidence motion against him, with 50 Ontario MPs calling for his removal this week. Latest opinion polls show 73% of overall Canadian voters and 43% of Liberals want him out. Ally NDP under Sikh radical Jagmeet Singh, for whom Trudeau has taken Canada's relationship with India on a limb, has decided to vote against him when the parliament meets after winter holidays. Trudeau's decision to impose an emergency during the 2022 truckers' protest has been declared unconstitutional by courts, and Trudeau faces charges of personal corruption in connection with the foundation in his father's name. Canadians are facing a long-running housing crisis, unaffordable rents, double-digit inflation, unemployment inching closer to double digits, and the economy in a mess. Guess they might not mind becoming the 51st state of the USA if continuing to have Trudeau as PM is their only other option. Trump perhaps sees that. But the American president-elect's more serious charge came against Panama, one which has geopolitical consequences. Trump told a conservative conference in Arizona that Panama was charging U.S. ships ridiculous, highly unfair fees to use its namesake canal. That if the ripoff did not stop, he would demand the canal to be returned to the United States. Trump added he did not want the Panama Canal falling into the wrong hands and specifically cited China, which has significant interests in the waterway. The comment on Panama was not off the cuff. A day before, Trump had posted on his social media that the canal was a vital national asset for America. In fact, in September last year, he mentioned taking back Panama Canal to Tucker Carlson in a podcast. Why is it weighing so much on Trump's mind? That's where American geopolitics comes in. The 81 kilometers long channel connects Pacific Ocean with the Atlantic, providing a narrow passage for the ships carrying much of American trade. Originally a French initiative, the Americans took over the construction sometime in 1885 after the French failed. The engineering marvel had claimed over 35,000 lives in its making, mostly to malaria and yellow fever that plagued the wooded Central American geography at that time. The ownership of the canal was handed over to Panama by the Carter administration in 1977, and there's a neutrality agreement that keeps the passageway open to international traffic. Over 14,000 ships pass through it annually, carrying 5% of global maritime trade. 75% of the US $270 billion per annum freight through Panama is either import to or export from America, irrespective of which country's ships are carrying it. Now here's the catch. The Chinese are the second biggest users of the canal after the United States and have backed it up with investments in Panama. The impact of Chinese presence can be gauged from the fact that in 2017, Panama cut its diplomatic ties with Taiwan and declared it a part of China. Obviously, for the Americans, the threat of Chinese presence in their backyard is both geo-economic and geostrategic. China, on its part, was quick to jump in with a statement by its embassy saying it recognizes the canal as the sovereign territory of Panama and that the canal shall remain a permanently neutral international passageway. It is unlikely that we are going to see any military action on the Panama front. The government might tweak the tariffs, which the dealmaker Trump might like. Ultimately, this posturing could just be another pressure point to leverage in the overall trade war that Trump is planning. President Trump's next territorial claim, however, is the one that has created the biggest diplomatic ripples. Nursing a grudge from his last term, perhaps, Trump crossed the Atlantic this time and reached for Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark. In 2019, too, he had sought to purchase the island from the kingdom. Greenland is in the Arctic Circle, is rich in minerals, and it straddles the shortest route that connects north of Europe with North America. That explains the geostrategic importance of the real estate occupying Trump's mind. A peaked Danish government said it was not up for sale. What must have got the Danes worried is the use of words absolute necessity by Trump. That they want to take it by force. Again, unlikely. But as in the case of the Panama Canal, so here, the overarching concern seems to be national security. If China is the bugbear in the former, Russia is a clear and present danger in this case. The reason why the United States maintains a strong airbase with a Space Force component on the island. Back in 2019, on a similar refusal by Mette Frederiksen, Danish Prime Minister, a miffed Trump had cancelled his Denmark trip, leading to a bit of a diplomatic froth across Europe. The idea of the US buying Greenland, in fact, goes back to the early 1900s, when a rising America had thought of securing its sea lanes by purchasing that huge mass of ice. Harry S. Truman again toyed with the idea during the war years of 1940s, but was subsequently abandoned till Trump raised it again in 2019.
Now, Denmark, I looked forward to going, but I thought that the Prime Minister's statement that it was absurd, it was nasty.
Like in the case of NATO, Trump perhaps wants Denmark to pay for its security rather than actually buy into the expensive European welfare system that Greenlanders are used to at Denmark's expense. More likely, it is just that pressure tactic. As if on cue, hours after Trump's shout-out, the Danish government announced a huge defense boost for Greenland security that included a couple of drones and 2 dog sled teams. Whatever the Danes believe, those Great Danes would suffice for a Normandy-style storming just in case Trump presses the button. It sounds comic, but for the fact that it's part of a larger tragedy panning out in Europe, that of its decline. That takes us to our third segment. In his first salvo at the European Union, Donald Trump took Brussels in a pincer, announcing either it buys more US oil and gas to balance trade or be ready to face tariffs. I told the European Union that they must make up their tremendous deficit with the United States by the larger scale purchase of our oil and gas. Otherwise, it is tariffs all the way, Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform on Friday. EU scurried for cover. Both President Ursula von der Leyen and ECB head Christine Lagarde asked member countries to buy more from USA, both energy and other US-made stuff. The threat has worked. EU had, in fact, preemptively increased buying of US LNG this past month, anticipating Trump tantrums. US is already the largest supplier of LNG to EU, accounting for 48% of the total supplies against 16% from Russia this quarter. While this gives you an idea of the kind of impact a mercurial Trump is already having, it also speaks volumes about the situation Europe finds itself in. From a sheepish response of Denmark to the EU leaders calibrating their conduct even before Trump takes office. There's a reason why the US would boss around Europe, Trump or no Trump. In 2008, the two economies were largely equal in size at roughly $14 trillion. Today, the United States stands at 28 trillion, 50% more than EU's 19 trillion. Nothing exemplifies Europe's economic slide better than the Volkswagen crisis. Europe's biggest employer in Europe's biggest economy, Germany, announced in September that it was contemplating shuttering down 3 of its car manufacturing units to ward off bankruptcy. Europe has lost the edge in industry and technology. Take a look at the top 10 tech companies of the world by market cap. 1 to 7 are American corporations, 8th is Taiwanese, 9th is Chinese, and 10th from South Korea. There are only 4 European companies in top 50 global big tech list. The first in the list appears at number 13 for Europe, then comes SAP at 18th, and then Schneider at distant 30. Another stat. There's not a single company in the European Union with a market cap of over 100 billion euros which has been set up from scratch in the last 50 years. European businesses are plagued with lower profits, slower revenue growth, and much lesser R&D spends vis-a-vis their American counterparts. There's no Silicon Valley parallel in Europe. Hemmed in by national boundaries, the market size limitation is compounded by layers of national rules, policies, and laws, and consequent compliance burden. And then there is the ideological cholesterol by way of postmodernist regulation, from climate change to woke accent on diversity, from strict labor laws to consumer-centric competition policies. While there's a certain idealism that guides those positions, together they have had an impact of stifling innovation and making corporations scoot for cover. Add to it the aging demographics, labor shortages, immigrant dependencies, and related civil strife due to the uncontrolled migration. And Europe presents a picture of an economy gone sick. Listen to this right-wing leader, Alice Weidel, taking Olaf Scholz to the cleaners for the situation in Germany in Bundestag.
Die Bürger haben ganz genau begriffen, dass ihre Politik Wohlstandsvernichtung, Deindustrialisierung, Massenmigration und Verlust der inneren Sicherheit bedeutet. Sie sind der Kanzler des Niedergangs, Herr Scholz.
You are the chancellor of decline, she said in this speech. around the time that Volkswagen made that shuttering decision. Since the year 2008, 30% of unicorns born in EU countries have migrated to the United States. Not that the leadership is not aware. A committee was set up to diagnose the sickness and prescribe a way out by the European Commission. Former ECB president and one of Europe's sharpest economic minds, Mario Draghi, was tasked to present a vision for the future of Europe. The Draghi report admits that European foundations are shaken. Europe missed out on the tech revolution led by the internet and the consequent productivity gains. It predicts a dire picture of Europe struggling at present levels of GDP even by 2050 if drastic measures are not taken. Imagine the morass Europe finds itself in, that Draghi says in his report. A resuscitation of the economy would need capital infusion 3 times that of the Marshall Plan in scale. I quote, "There's an existential challenge. We have to choose. If we don't, we would be forced to choose. We would need to scale back our ambition on many fronts, from development at home to independence on the world stage." Draghi muses. It is likely that most EU leaders concur. Among prescriptions is closing the innovation gap with US, China, doing something to reduce energy dependence on the rest of the world. Except for Norway, Europe does not have much of its own energy reserves, and addressing this issue is going to decide the future effectively, admits Draghi. We should abandon the illusion that only procrastination can preserve consensus. In fact, procrastination has only produced slower growth. We have reached a point where without action, we will have to either compromise our welfare, our environment, or our freedom, he concludes. The diagnosis is scathing and the medicine is strong, said Chatham House on the report. But there's a bigger crisis above all, the crisis of leadership and confidence. There's an absence of self-belief. The Supreme Court in Romania countermanded the national election last month, citing TikTok manipulation. Yes, the topmost court of Romania in Bucharest ruled that the election was hijacked by TikTok videos of the right-wing leader who was in the lead. Europe looks tentative, little lost. As we head into the new year, there's a certain self-doubt and confusion that afflicts the bloc. Scholz just lost his government in Germany. Emmanuel Macron has faced headwinds post the EU elections, shuffling 2 prime ministers. Starmer already looks directionless. Of course, UK is Europe, but not EU. This crisis of self was encapsulated by the only leader of Europe who seems to be sitting pretty. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, while addressing the Atlantic Council in New York on the sidelines of the UNGA. Listen in.
This analysis was focused on Meloni's Western nationalism. The author, which is called Dr. Constantini, argues that my political belief is in what might be called Western nationalism, a thought which at its heart embodies the survival and renaissance of Western civilization, which according to Constantini is new to the European scene.
Her solution to the decline of Europe? Greek philosophy, Roman law, Christian humanism, and Michael Jackson. Thanks for watching.
Let's now take a look at the other top stories that we're tracking. A 10-year-old boy who fell into a borewell in Madhya Pradesh's Guna district has been rescued. The incident took place in Janjali area of Raghoghar last evening. After successful efforts by a rescue operation, the child was taken out from the deep shaft. Indian warship INS Tushil on its maiden operational deployment made a port call at Casablanca in Morocco yesterday. The visit marked an important step in strengthening maritime and diplomatic ties between India and Morocco. The visit aims to explore further avenues for collaboration between the two naval forces. Scores of imams and muazzins associated with the Delhi Waqf Board have announced to stage protests if their due salaries are not released by tomorrow. The imams have alleged that the salaries of at least 240 of them have been pending for the last 17 months.
हम 17 महीने की सैलरी की डिमांड लेकर आए हैं कि हमारी 17 महीने की सैलरी दे दो, क्योंकि जितने इमाम हैं, करीब 250 इमाम, ये सारे के सारे परेशान हैं। 18,000 रुपये सैलरी है, मात्र 18,000 रुपये। यानी इनका जो मजदूर है दिल्ली सरकार का, उसको ये लोग 21,000 कुछ देते हैं और इमाम की सैलरी सिर्फ 18,000 है। आगे की और कार्रवाई करेंगे, प्रोटेस्ट करेंगे जगह जगह।
Normal life was affected in Imphal due to a band called over the arrest of 6 armed men and death of 1 in a gunfight with the police. Shops and other commercial establishments were closed while public vehicles remained off the roads. More than 250 people have been killed and thousands have been rendered homeless in the ethnic violence between Meithis and Kukis.